Hi, Karen.
I
So you've recently moved down to La Paz, Mexico. I'm just curious on some of your reasons that you moved away from Calgary, Canada, down to Mexico.
okay. My name is Karen, and I'm Mexican. And I moved to Canada back in 2016. I came to Canada as a student, and eventually, after finishing my university in Canada, I got my work permit to start working part time and eventually full time. Started officially working full time, I would say, in 2018. And I started living in Vancouver. That was my main city where I came first. I was educated at Capilano University in North Vancouver. I took a degree in business administration. And as an immigrant, I'm going to explain you guys why I decided to leave Canada and move back to my home country in Mexico. Let's start with the number one, that is the cost of living. The cost of living in Canada has increased a lot since 2016 when I just moved there. I feel like grocery prices there is really expensive right now. Chicken, meat, and vegetables. I do think that prices for food are very expensive. After the pandemic, I also think that prices went up much more than they should have been.
I'd say they've probably been up 50% over the last few years on most items.
Yeah, so if you consider me as an immigrant making 40K a year, right? A lot of money went to my groceries every month, just for me to eat.
What about rent? That's gone
Rent,
up a lot as well.
Vancouver is just it's very hard to find a rental place. I really struggle to find a rental place for me and my brother when I just got there, and I feel like all the immigrants that are coming to Canada every year, they either get to Vancouver or Toronto, and it makes the rental more difficult. And there's also a lot of betting in those rentals that you consider affordable, right? Especially for like immigrants, students. Um, so I really had a hard time finding a rental unit. But I said, well, I'm here already. I have this work permit, so I just gotta take advantage of my position, thinking about how many people would like to be in my shoes right now. So I decided to keep going and try to find a rental place that eventually I did. Things didn't work out at the end. Rental prices went up so much in price, and unfortunately I wasn't making enough money to cover for my food and my rental expenses.
I believe Vancouver and Toronto are the two most expensive cities in Canada to rent. Vancouver, I think, is number one, and Toronto is closely right behind it.
Yeah, so a lot of people always talk about, as an immigrant, like do a research of the country you are going. And like I did my research back in 2016, and it was not easy, but it wasn't as hard as it is right now.
Well, lots changed in the last 8 years.
Yeah, so going back to the point, uh, food and rental in Vancouver really was taking all my wage. Then I decided to leave Vancouver and move to Calgary for that reason. Also, the job, I think, the job, in my experience as an immigrant, I think that as an educated person that went to university and stuff like that, it is very hard to find an administration job. I did work, and I work most in the retail industry. I had an office job in a manufacturer company after some time, but I really struggled to find this office job that everybody wants.
So after moving to Calgary, what were the other costs that were a little bit too much living in Canada?
In 2022, I decided to leave Vancouver and I moved to Calgary. In Calgary, I realized that rental prices were not as cheap as they used to. There's not regulation in the rental prices, so rentals increased 30% over the last year, and there's no limit. So you can pay right now $1,200, and in a month you can pay 30% more without any regulation and any restriction.
There's also limited amount of rentals in Calgary as well, especially with all the people moving to Calgary out of Vancouver and out of Ontario.
Yes, so when I moved to Calgary, unfortunately, it wasn't the right time because a lot of people were moving to Calgary at the same time because of the unaffordability in the housing market back in Vancouver and Toronto. That's when, after the pandemic, houses started to really increase. There's a fly here that is all over me, sorry. Prices really started to increase a lot, and a lot of people decided to sell their homes and move to more affordable cities such as Calgary and Montana, and yeah, so I feel like Calgary is a city that is not as cheap as it used to, and it's also getting expensive because of all these people coming in.
So what about other costs like utilities and...
Utilities are expensive in Calgary. I was paying around $400 for, electricity and garbage collection, and in the summertime. And we are talking about when the sun goes up at 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and goes down around 9 at night. So $400 in the summertime. And in the winter, I was paying around $600 just for electricity and heat. Another reason why I moved out from Canada is housing. Unfortunately, and this is a reality, housing is unaffordable in Canada. There is a lot of taxes involved. For instance, property taxes are around $3,500 a year, and insurance is around $300 a month. Interest rates went up that really make it difficult for your mortgage. So that means that your mortgage is more expensive now than it used to be. So that makes housing more unaffordable and more difficult for immigrants and even for Canadians. My last reason is weather. Weather is very challenging in Canada wherever you are. You cannot escape the Canadian winter. In Vancouver, it gets to -5, it's always cloudy, and it's always, again, the fly. And it's always raining. And yeah, so if you live in Vancouver, you know what I'm talking about. And And in Calgary, it gets really, really cold. My last Canadian winter, we got to -40 in December, January. So yeah, you can go out without a lot of clothes and you can really be outside. And people who live in Calgary know what I'm talking about when we get to -40. Anyways, so I'm gonna wrap up the video here. These are my reasons why I don't live in Canada anymore as a immigrant and why I decided to move back to my country. I hope you guys like this video. The purpose of this video is just be informative, because I feel like there's a lot of misinformation in the internet, in the social media about Canada, and I said why not to share my own experience with you and my own information. So yeah, it's just sharing my experience and sharing my thoughts about what Canada is right now in the immigrant perspective. I hope you guys like this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you're interested to watch more videos, I'm gonna be here about Canada and my new life in Mexico. So I hope you guys subscribe to my channel and see you guys in the next one.